had the approval of the minutes as well. So could we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And Ray, can you do the safety briefing?
Be glad to. So safety is a core value here at JEA. So for those attending the meeting in person, the safety protocol is displayed on this slide. And then those virtually, please be mindful of your surroundings.
Okay, can we have the comments from the public, please? Or if there are any. Any on the? All right, we have no comments. Before we begin, could we approve the minutes of the last Capitol meeting?
Yeah, so moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Ray, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Baker. So good morning. Good morning, committee members. Good morning, board members. So this is our second Capital Projects Committee meeting. Our first meeting, you might recall, was held back in May, so about 3 months ago. We do have a full agenda today, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we plan to cover. So as you can see here, there are 7 items, 2 which are action items, and the remaining are for information. The first 4 items listed there pertain to water projects, and we have presenters here, including our VP of Water Wastewater, Hai Vu, as well as 2 senior managers, Beth DeMayo sitting to my left, and Ryan Popko, who are going to be presenting. These guys have been integrally involved with the projects. The next 2 items are electric, and we have here Ricky Erickson, our VP of Electric Operations, as well as Kevin Holbrooks, VP of, or the Director of Environmental Operations. And they're going to provide an update on the combined cycle project, as well as an overview of the new greenhouse gas rules and potential impacts to JEA. Ricky is then going to provide an overview of our electric transmission study and identified new transmission projects, as well as improvements to our existing system. Finally, the last item on the agenda is a summary of our major active capital projects with estimated project budgets exceeding $25 million. And I'll give an overview of those projects. So you can tell that we have a lot here, a lot of information, a lot to go over. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And first, it's going to be Hai.
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, Chair Baker and committee members. As you may recall, last May, we came in front of the committee to talk about this project, phase 2 of the expansion of the Arlington East Water Reclamation Facility. Construction of this project was advertised as a hard bid, and only 1 contractor responded with a bid of nearly $97 million. Although the bid was deemed to be reasonable, the committee was concerned about the cost and the fact that only 1 bid was received, and recommended staff to review the options for rebidding with enhanced marketing efforts to attract more bidders. So I'm here today to provide updates for the project and our plans moving forward. No actions are required by the committee. So just a quick background of the Arlington East Reclamation Facility. Built in 1976 and located at 1555 Bilko Road, it is JEA's 2nd largest wastewater treatment facility. It currently treats about 20 million gallons of wastewater per day. It produces reclaimed water for irrigation, and its effluent will serve as the source water for the H2.0 purification center, which you will hear about later on today, and the 6 million gallon per day purified water facility. In 2020, JEA constructed a 5th secondary clarifier and upgraded 4 others to increase capacity and flexibility and to ensure resiliency, redundancy, and reliability. This work, which was phase 1 of the expansion, was completed at a cost of $19.5 million. Phase 2 of the plant expansion includes the upgrade of the influent structure, the aeration basin, the primary clarifiers, and the blowers. The influent structure, including the screens, the concrete structure, the influent and effluent channels, and the piping, are facing severe corrosion due to high levels of H2S, hydrogen sulfide gas. The aeration basin, the primary clarifiers, and the blowers are undersized so that we have a hard time reaching our nitrogen reduction limits during the winter months and during peak storm events. So phase 2 will completely replace the influent structure and add new aeration basin and blowers and replace 2 primary clarifiers. The design was completed by Hazen, our engineer, and was advertised for bidding in November of 2023. In January of 2024, JEA received 1 bid from Wharton Smith in the amount of $96,857,000. The bid was 20% higher than our estimates, but subsequent reviews showed that the estimates undervalued the prices in materials and labor and failed to account for additional efforts in site work excavation, shoring, and dewatering. The review also showed competitive pricing from subcontractors and materials and equipment manufacturers and suppliers and was deemed to be reasonable. On May 14th, staff presented the project to the committee with a recommendation to award to Wharton Smith. The committee was concerned about the cost, the singular bidder, and recommended us to review the options for rebidding, as I said before, with enhanced marketing to attract more bidders. So since the meeting, staff has accomplished the following. We identified 3 options for rebidding. Option number 1, rebid the project as is, but with enhanced marketing efforts. And the enhanced marketing efforts will be true for all 3 options. So the plan is to accomplish the following: to create a targeted advertisement plan to reach contractors, including those with local presence in markets outside of Northeast Florida, to hold a series of workshops with contractors to discuss the project and to understand market challenges, to hold site tours and open house events at the facility to allow potential bidders to gather additional information about the project, and to extend the solicitation duration to allow contractors plenty of time to bid. The risks include low participation by potential bidders, as we experienced before. Large contractors that can bond and perform this size and scope of work do not often participate in hard bid solicitations. There is so much work currently available, they may simply bid elsewhere. Option 2 is to break the project into 2 distinct projects and bid separately. The projects would be number 1, influent structure, and number 2, the aeration basin, primary clarifiers, and blowers. This will allow the smaller contractors to be competitive and have the bonding and labor capacity to complete the projects. The engineer would need to revise the drawings and the specs to develop the separate bid packages. The risks include increased in cost and duration due to increased efforts in project management, engineering, coordination and construction, and loss of economies of scale. Option 3 is to use a different selection method, an evaluated request for proposal, or RFP, for construction services. So by selecting a contractor, not only based on price, but also qualifications, experience, and project approach, this option can encourage participation from large contractors that otherwise would avoid design bid build projects. The risks include increased duration and costs due to the extended selection process and the potential of not selecting the lowest bid. These risks, however, may be offset by selecting a qualified contractor with the best experience and the best approach who can in turn save time, minimize change orders, and thus saving costs. Option 1, rebidding with enhanced marketing efforts, is expected to be the lowest overall cost and to incur the shortest schedule delay. Option 3, evaluated RFP for construction services, may attract contractors who otherwise would avoid hard bidding. So staff is pursuing both options and has completed the following items. We issued the request for information, RFI, on June 26th to qualified contractors, informing them of JEA's intent to rebid the project in the fall. We held site visits on July 17th and 25th, in which we reviewed the project scope and design documents and allowed the contractors to visit the site to talk to operations and to understand the unique challenges of the project. In the RFI, we asked the following questions. Is your firm interested in bidding on this project? If not, what could JEA do to increase interest? Do you have bonding, timing, manpower, or other constraints? Are there any other issues or concerns not brought up anywhere else your firm would like to notify JEA about? We benchmarked with 9 other Florida utilities that have recently built wastewater facilities, looking at bidders list, the procurement methods, and lessons learned. We also reached out to 12 large contractors for feedback. In addition, staff will perform the following. We will hold an informational meetings with individual contractors prior to advertisement of the bid. We will simplify the bid form for feedback from the contractors. We will advertise the project with a longer duration, about 2 to 3 months. We will also publish the solicitation to national project marketing platforms such as DemandStar. And we will address in the rebid all the questions and issues from the previous solicitation. So shown are the tentative dates that we are planning. And then we will advertise with a hard bid or evaluated RFP in the fall of 2024 with bids due in winter of 2024. After vetting, we plan to bring the results to the committee in February of 2025 for review and approval. We can then issue the notice to proceed in spring of 2025. But thank you for allowing me to present. I welcome any advice or input that the committee has for us. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions of Hyde?
Yeah, I've got one, Chair Baker. Hi, it's probably just me. I'm not, for the difference between option 1 and option 3, I'm still sort of not clear on what's the distinction.
Yes, sir. Option 1 is strictly a low bid. We're going to go out and present the plans and specs to the contractors and the low bid wins. The third option, pricing, is we're planning to be about 50% of the overall score. Price is 50%, qualifications, company experience, staff experience, and the project approach will comprise the remaining 50%. With the third option, contractors who are not interested in hard bid and want to win projects based on the qualifications, they would be more interested. Price is still a part of the evaluation, but they may be still interested.
And just as a reminder, option 1 is how we bid it the first time when we received one bid. So the enhanced efforts that High is talking about, that pertains to both option 1 as well as option 3.
Yes.
So I'm a little confused on the timelines and so forth, because you talked about June and then there's August, September. I'm just a little, are they both out there on the street now?
No, sir. The RFI is currently out on the street. That's where we're asking them to provide feedback to us.
Okay.
Then as a result
Okay.
of today's meeting and with your advice and input, we plan to go out in August for bid. And whether it's a hard bid or an evaluate
both,
RFP,
I guess.
we haven't decided yet.
Okay, so you're still evaluating both, but you're only going to proceed with one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Okay, all right.
Hi, what kind of feedback have you gotten from the marketplace?
Great questions there, Chair Baker. Very few large contractors are interested in hard bid. The feedback we have received from some contractors is that with the evaluator RFP, they would be inclined to review and to participate in the bidding. So at this point, without a lot more details, we are leaning towards that because we are attracting more large contractors, at least getting their interest. And we received comments, feedback from the last bidding. One major concern was the complexity of the bid form. Therefore, we will simplify. We will allow contractors more time to bid and get the subcontractors and suppliers in place.
Thank you. Anything else? Proceed.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Elizabeth?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Elizabeth DeMeo. I am a senior manager in the Water, Wastewater Planning and Engineering and Construction Department. As of this month, I've been at JEA 17 years, and all of which has been spent working on major capital improvement projects for JEA. Today, I'm going to speak to you concerning the Southside Integrated Piping System Program, or otherwise known as SIPS. The SIPS program will deliver raw water from the Main Street Water Treatment Plant, or North Grid, to the South Grid to improve water reliability and sustainability for future water demands. These projects were identified in the iWater study that was completed in 2017. The overall program consists of installation of approximately 19.2 miles of pipelines and improvements to the associated water treatment plants. The SIPS Deerwood project is nearing completion and will be placed into service October of this year. The SIPS Greenland project is under construction, and the project I'll be focusing on in later slides. The SIPS Oakwood project is a future project and is scheduled to start design in fiscal year 28. I'd like to take a deeper dive into SIPS Greenland. The SIPS Greenland project consists of installation of approximately 10.5 miles of pipelines and construction of a 1.1 million gallon ground storage tank and associated appurtenances. The SIPS Greenland project is being executed by the Construction Manager at Risk, or CMAR delivery method, and the project was awarded to Garney Companies in August of 2022, and their current contract amount is $53.6 million. Construction is 28% complete with approximately 11,000 linear feet of piping installed to date, and the overall project is scheduled to be complete in April of 2026. The next phase of the project is to commence construction on the 1.1 million gallons ground storage tank and associated appurtenances. Therefore, today, the action that we are requesting the committee is that staff requests the Capital Projects Committee recommend the board approve an award to Garney Companies for the next phase of the project. This includes the construction of a new ground storage tank and associated appurtenances in the amount of $9,915,710.88 for a new contract amount of $63,571,167.97. And like I said, I appreciate and thank you for letting me speak today, and I'm open for any questions you may have.
Elizabeth, show that map if you would, go back? So we're building pipelines from the Main Street?
The solid blue lines are existing pipelines that are in the ground from the Main Street water treatment plant all the way over. I don't know if you all remember when we did the large river crossing parallel to the Matthews Bridge where we had our pipelines strung out along Arlington Expressway. That was part of the total water management plan kind of program, which basically was able to get the water from Main Street to a point on the east of the river. That pipeline segment stopped around the Southside Boulevard Bradley Road area. So the SIPS program is, if you want to call it, a phase 2 of TWMP, but we named it different to kind of help disassociate itself as far as this is but it is ultimately a continuation of moving water from the Main Street and North Grid to the South Grid. So the actual Deerwood pipeline project was the first one that was started. It connects to the pipeline that was stopped under the TWMP program there at the Southside Boulevard Bradley Road, and then it's a continuation on down. So it's a continuation of the TWMP program that was done, which included the river crossing under the Matthews, or along the Matthews Bridge.
And this is going to sound so basic that you may laugh, but is the reason we're doing this is because the wells are more powerful and better suited in Main Street than, or the ones on the south side are just getting stressed and need the help? Can you kind of explain the
Yes,
thought
it's
process?
really just, the transport of water from the Main Street area. There are other wells that support the North Grid, and there are issues on, would you like? Okay, sure.
Yes, sir. We are constrained by the district's consumptive use permit. So the South Grid has experienced tremendous growth, but unfortunately the water supply in the South Grid, both the quantity and the quality, is worse than the north side because of because the river separates the county. So in order to supplement the water demand on the South Grid, we have to transport water from across the river. So it's just a matter of supply that we don't have enough of, both in real terms and the consumptive use permit.
And refresh my memory, do we have a consumptive use permit that runs out around 2030?
2031, yes, sir.
And what's the plan after that? I mean,
a great question. Part of the solution you're going to hear from Ryan Popko today, but we will ask for as much water as we can, and we will have to supplement our water supply for the future. And the purification facility is one, conservation and other alternative supply options we will evaluate and pursue.
thank you. Other questions?
Yes, sir. Obviously, what you're asking us to approve now is a storage tank, not necessarily the piping. The piping's already going in.
Correct.
Can you go back to the map? You can't see it on this little screen. Which actual, the Greenland?
The Greenland is the one that is circled in green.
Right.
It's the
So that's-
furthest
so-
south
but-
facility.
but You talked about the first thing we talked about was the water line going to it.
Yes, the water line was already awarded to Garney Companies.
And
So
which
it is
water line
actually,
is that?
it is, if you see where the Deerwood water treatment plant is, that's circled in red.
Yes.
The orange-ish, that's kind of an orangish checkerboarded pipeline route is actually the pipeline to
And that
the,
was part of the other information that was in here about the easement between the Davis property and the Skinner property and
That is
and
correct.
so forth.
Yes.
So that's that water line.
correct.
And then what you're asking us to approve today is the tank.
Yes,
The
it is.
storage
It is award to Garney's for the construction of the storage tank at Greenland. There's not enough storage volume at the current Greenland facility. So it was always planned to have this storage tank to make sure that there's enough storage volume at the Greenland Water Treatment Plant, because right now it cannot receive the water that would be coming through the SIPS pipeline. So the storage tank was always part of the scope and needed. We're just at the phase now that the design's been complete that we were able to get the guaranteed maximum price from the contractor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
we get a motion to approve? Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, you got it. Thank you.
Ryan's going to join us now.
All right. Good morning, Chair Baker and committee members. My name is Ryan Popko. I am engineering manager. I've been with JEA a little over 10 years, and almost all of that time I have been leading our water purification program. And sorry. All right, so this is going to be a two-step presentation. The first part, I'm going to give you some background on what our water purification program is. The second half of it is going to be an action item looking to approve work that was in the scope of work and took the contract a little more time to design. And we're now at the point where we can approve them to move forward with a portion of their work. So this started with a water supply need. You had a great question before asking hi about our consumptive use permit and what's coming next. So JEA's sole source of supply right now is the Florida Aquifer. And that's a finite resource. And as our system continues to grow, we need to come up with some other supply of water. That permit was issued in 2011. It was a 20-year permit reaching out to 2031. And within that time frame is when we're going to have to start planning for something else. So when we do our integrated water supply planning, we have a number of different tools that we use. Number one is water conservation. So the less our customers use, the more we can serve, the more we're able to serve a larger portion of people. Reclaimed water plays a big part in that. So instead of our customers using our precious drinking water supply to irrigate their lawns, we use reclaimed water. So it directly offsets the amount of water that we use. And over the last 10 years between water conservation and reclaimed water, our customers have saved about 25%. And with our service area, that saves over 9 billion gallons every year that we don't have to withdraw from the aquifer. So what that does is help to extend when we need these other projects. And so in that planning efforts and our integrated water resources planning, the next step is water purification. And that has a number of benefits over other options such as surface water and seawater desalination, primarily because it's a cheaper option available to us.
It's cheaper than desalination, but not cheaper than just pumping.
Correct. Our cheapest supply right now is the aquifer. And so when we reach that permit limit, any option is going to be more expensive than what we have now. It'll just be a smaller portion of our supply.
I remember years ago, there was a big debate because the Central Florida was withdrawing from the river.
Yep.
Now, is that another option?
It is an option. It's variable quality. So this supply would have a more consistent quality, which would make it less complex to treat.
How about cost?
Cheaper.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have that variability in quality.
Okay.
Yep. So when our consumptive use permit was issued in 2011, we started having discussions with the Water Management District about what that next allocation of water would be. And that led to us doing a plan with them in 2014 and led to JEA developing a 3-phase program for this. Phase 1 was from 2016 to 2019, and that was pilot testing. What we wanted to do was evaluate available technologies that are out there being used around the world for this application. We did a lot of laboratory testing, and that was all about ensuring protection of public health. And then that's when we also developed our initial communications plan. That was a cost share with the Water Management District for that portion of the work. We're now in phase 2, which is demonstration. This is about optimizing the performance so we can make it more cost effective when we go larger, training staff on this new equipment, and then a visitor center so that we can engage the public and show them what we're doing with this. That is also a cost share with the Water Management District for this portion of the project. And that's what the second half of this presentation will be about. The third phase is implementation. So we'd be able to apply this full scale as demands increase in the future. Next slide. So we call this the H2.0 purification program. H2.0 is a nod to the 2.0 version of our water supply. And what this does is it purifies available reclaimed water to drinking water quality. By doing that, we can then use that water to replenish the aquifer. So just like nature does when it rains and it percolates through the ground to replenish the aquifer, this program will essentially be doing the same thing, just in a shorter amount of time and a smaller footprint. So this consists of a combination of established industry-leading purification technologies. You see on the bottom left, that is using membrane filtration, followed by reverse osmosis, followed by ultraviolet advanced oxidation, and that's how we purify that water. This multi-barrier purification process ensures safety, and it actually produces water that's so pure we have to add minerals back into it before we can use it. And so the question you asked before was, why are we transferring water from the north grid to the south grid? And that's because we have lack of supply there and we're meeting demands. So with this project, this is going to be centrally located in that south grid area where we have the need for additional water supply. It'll be 1 million gallon per day capacity. That capacity allows us to train staff on full-scale equipment. It also includes a room for additional pilot testing, so we can continue to optimize on a small scale and drive down the cost of future facilities. And then that visitor center for public education. And next slide.
Hey, Ryan, if I could, so the technology is there right now then for this process, is that correct?
Yeah, these projects are a number of different places throughout the world. It's where people have water supply need challenges. So Singapore's got a great program. The world's largest facility is in California, Southern California, where they purify and replenish their aquifer with more gallons than we treat and produce for our drinking water system today. So these have been used for decades, yeah.
But it's basically RO. I mean, it's just reverse osmosis, which has been around for
Yeah.
a very long time.
Yes.
But it's expensive.
Relatively, when you compare it to other options, the cost has come down since RO was invented and used over time. There's been efficiencies in the application of it. And so this purification program has a number of significant benefits for us in our environment. So as I mentioned, it's the most economical supply option that we have. It provides us with long-term water supply resiliency. By replenishing the aquifer with this water, it not only increases the quantity that's down there that we can then withdraw, but also improves the quality of that aquifer supply. Provides long-term assurance of water for future generations. And this is the only option available that not only solves a water supply need, but it also helps us reduce the volume of water discharged to the river. So as part of our integrated water resources planning, this is the solution to that, as well as what you've heard with Senate Bill 64. This is a key component of that because now we're reusing more of that reclaimed water and reducing the discharge that we go to the river.
So is the intent that this water is re-injected or just pumped in the pipes?
That after we purify this water, it'll be pumped down to the aquifer.
Oh, it does. Okay, it doesn't just go straight into the pipes back to our houses.
No.
Oh, okay, that's what I understand.
Yeah, so we're using the aquifer essentially as a large storage tank to provide that water for when we need it.
So we're still going to have, I mean, our consumptive use continues to go up.
Yeah, it will, but we'll get a proportional increase in our permit for what we put down.
Or put down.
Yep.
Okay. That's what I understand.
And is it Senate Bill 50?
64. Yep.
Does this project get us there, or is it just still sort of a demonstration project that shows what we've got to do going forward?
This program is one of the options to get there. So we have, just like our other plan, we have a multi-pronged solution. This is one option that helps us comply with Senate Bill 64.
There's a series of projects. Some of those are listed on the list. What Ryan is going over now is, of course, the pilot facility, but this is a whole program. And so there are going to be other H 2.0 facilities that will help us address Senate Bill 64.
And what, if we made a guesstimate of what it's going to cost to get Senate Bill 64 compliant?
I believe we have a planning level number for that. 2 billion? 2 billion.
Thank you. Sorry I asked. Go ahead, Ryan.
All right. So before I move on to the action item for this, is there any other questions about our overall program and what we're doing?
Yeah, continuing with the dumb questions. So we purify the water, inject it back into the aquifer. So when we use it again, we're still going to have to re-purify another, right? When we draw back from the aquifer, Or I guess, why do we have to put it back in the aquifer, is my question.
So the first part of the question is when the water is in the aquifer, it'll come out our existing wells and go through our existing water treatment plants and out to customers. The reason why we're using the aquifer for that storage is for peak demands and things like that. So when our flows are high at our water reclamation facilities and we have excess reclaimed water people aren't using, that's usually when we have low water demands. And then when we have low flows at our water reclamation facilities, we have high water demands. So this allows us to use that aquifer as storage for those periods. All right, so move on to, so for this project, our purification center, we chose a progressive design build delivery method that was awarded to the Haskell Company and their partner Black & Veatch as their engineer. That was in October of 2019. The board approved the property purchase for this site in September of 2021. We're currently at 30% completion. You can see the photos on the right of the walls and piping in the ground. Final completion is scheduled for October of next year. Current contract amount is $78.9 million. And this request is to approve $4,639,615 for degasification and remineralization system, associated appurtenances and finishes. And this work was in the original scope of work and it's in our budget. It just took the contractor additional time to develop these to the point that they could bid them.
Where exactly is this facility?
It is in our South Grid. It's off of Southside Boulevard, just south of JTB. Staff is requesting Capital Projects Committee recommend the board approve an award to the Haskell Company for the H2.0 Purification Center. This award includes the construction of planned and newly designed degasification and remineralization system, associated appurtenances and finishes in the amount of $4,639,615 for a new contract amount of $83,506,772.37.
And Ryan, have you all reviewed this for competitive? Make sure you're okay with these numbers.
Yes, the pricing for this came in about 30% lower than what our estimate was.
Praise the Lord.
Move approval. For once.
We've got a motion. I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Ray.
Thank you, Chair Baker. So this project right here, this is a new project, Northwest Water Reclamation Facility, which is in the planning phase. And we're bringing this to the committee, not as action, as information and for awareness. So you know that this is happening. So this new facility, it is to support growth in Northwest Duval County. The initial size is 2 million gallons per day. The planning level estimate is, as you see there, 120 million, and it's projected to be online at the end of 2028. The projected build out for this facility is 9 million gallons per day. So how we're proceeding as far as design is concerned, the engineer that has been selected is Hazen and Sawyer. And the design or their services are going to be conducted in 3 phases. The first phase is preliminary design, and the award amount for that is about $2.4 million. After that is going to be phase 2, which is the more detailed design, and we're going to determine what type of delivery method will be utilized. We'll be coming back to this committee for input. And phase 3 will be post-design services or construction services. So bringing this to the committee again for awareness. This award has not yet been given to Hazen and Sawyer. Next slide, please. That's the end.
So tell me what we'll do with this plant. What is the purpose of it?
Let's go back, please. Go back one more time. So just like Arlington, just like Buckman, just like all of our water reclamation facilities, This is to provide the wastewater services for this area, kind of what we see outlined there in black. So basically, the homes, the businesses, all of that, they're going to graciously give us their wastewater. We're going to treat it, and it's going to be treated to reclaim standards, and we'll produce reclaimed water.
So this is not runoff water, this is sewerage.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's amazing.
Are there any facilities out in this area now, or is most of this?
There are facilities out there now, but they're being treated by other plants. So what you see there in blue are what we believe are going to be proposed developments, and that plant will serve that.
The big green in the middle, I guess, is the airport.
Yes, that's the airport.
Thank you.
So this will be coming back.
Okay.
All right.
Ricky,
Morning,
morning.
Chair Baker, members of the committee. I'm Ricky Erickson, Vice President Electric Systems. Hear me okay? We're on. To make sure
Yes.
everybody hear me. Here today to present an update on a combined cycle, kind of moving to the design phase. So I'm here substituting for Pedro. He has a obligation he couldn't get out of today. He is performing his civic duty today. So I'm here pinch hitting for him. So we'll give you an update of our plan, and Kevin will also talk about the greenhouse gas rules, some of the potential impacts of the greenhouse gas rules, and we'll go over some of the market test observations and considerations that we're going to be going through as we go through this process. So we have some significant milestones and activities going on. After March 26th update, the team continued with the implementation plan and assessment of the new greenhouse gas rules and their impact on JEA. The main objective is to inform the Capital Project Committee of the next market options, the request for proposals, and how JEA is accounting for the new greenhouse gas rules in the need for power process as part of the Public Service Commission and Florida Department of Environmental Protection requirements. This graphic here, which was provided at the March board meeting, illustrates the significant activities related to the project, plan timelines, and when the Capital Project Committee and board should be receiving updates from the team as denoted by the green diamonds. So the gray status shows where we brought it to the board in March. August 24, we're going to be doing some, going out to the market to do some Power Island RFP, which means equipment, things of that nature.
What is a power island?
Power Island is where all this equipment is located. So you have the combustion turbine, you have the generator, you have the steam recovery unit from the
When
combustion turbine.
constructed?
When constructed.
Okay.
So we have to determine what technology, what vendor, what application will be used so we can compare that to the market test options. So to meet that identified need for long-term energy supply, we're prepared to commence a market test solicitation with the intent of obtaining viable proposals later this month. In tandem, JEA is developing a self-build comparable option. That's where the Power Island and the technology comes in. So JEA plans to initiate a Power Island solicitation to determine the best technology solution for the Power Island equipment to competitively evaluate its options. The Power Island equipment consists of, like I said, the combustion turbine, the steam turbine, the heat recovery unit, all the associated equipment to make all that work. So we expect to come back in February 25 to give you an update on that expected technology decision.
Have we picked a location?
Yes, sir, STRPP. So also JEA is planning to use an independent evaluator for this project. An independent evaluator has the responsibility to perform a qualitative and quantitative evaluation of all the options along with our other evaluators, which are JEA SMEs on the project. These activities allow for more appropriately determination of the power supply project options, including their risks, their costs, and applicable regulatory requirements to file a determination of need for a new resource, which is what we have to do with the Public Service Commission. The Capital Projects Committee and Board should expect a presentation and the associated documentation to review and provide approval of a project option after our market test is completed in July 2025. So that's when the real rubber hits the road in July 2025. The team continues to prepare testimonies, exhibits, and project environmental permitting documentation to file a determination of need with a site certification application with the state. That's kind of our highlights at this point. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, I'm going to turn over to Kevin to give us some greenhouse gas rules
Let me
review.
I thought we were still evaluating, making sure that this was the best approach and so forth.
It is. This is part of that approach.
Okay.
So this, by doing this, we can compare and send to the market what we have established, so we can see if there's any more competitive projects that can come in and maybe beat it. So this is kind of a standard to evaluate against.
All right, this is still the evaluation stage.
Still evaluation
Okay.
stage.
All right.
And the assumption based on what these things cost is that we think that this is going to be the best solution. And I'm leading the witness a little bit, but the greenhouse gas regulations that have come down from President Biden throw a monkey wrench in this.
It has forced us to do some more studying to see how the impacts are going to impact us in particular. And that's what Kevin's here to kind of go over.
Okay. I just wanted to introduce you properly.
Thank you. Yes, this is just a quick Kevin Holbrooks, Director of Environmental Operations. Refresh, I know we touched on this at the last meeting and everything about it, and just wanted to kind of do a real high-level recap. It's about 800 pages. We're going to do it in one slide. So
That's
it's
how
like
low.
on new combined cycles, bottom line is you're going to be limited to 40% capacity. That's how much you can operate the unit, unless you install carbon sequestration. And as I indicated before, carbon sequestration right now, we're undergoing a study. We just initiated it to determine the feasibility if carbon sequestration is even feasible in our geological formation in Northeast Florida. If it's feasible, that's great. We could probably inject it underground. If it's not feasible, then how much is it going to cost us to pipe it if we had to do that? The good news about this rule, there is flexibility. The models seem to indicate that we still need a new unit, even if it was capped at 40% capacity. The good news is if carbon sequestration is viable in the future, then we can install it and increase that capacity factor to 100% in the future if we needed to. On the simple cycle units, the capacity factor is limited to 20%. Just for kind of a benchmark, the simple cycle units we have in place today that we operate, all of them are under 20% capacity. They're peaking units, so they don't operate at a base load. And on our existing coal, I think that this is the one that causes us the most concern, I guess. There's three options in the rule. You don't do anything, you have to retire the units by 2032. If you increase your capacity to 40% co-firing natural gas, you get like a reprieve to 2039. And if you install, once again, back to carbon sequestration, then they can run indefinitely. So another study, once again, we're looking into those and how that impacts our operational flexibility. And the last thing I want to touch on is our operational or the other consideration. There's a lot going on, as we're all aware. The big one is November 5th. The election will tell us a lot whether the Biden administration continues forward or if the Republicans come in. We're sure to see changes in this rule. The other one is there's a lot of legal action going on. Immediately after the rule became finalized, there was 8 petitions to stay the case or to stay the rule until the litigation is over. Basically, staying the rule means that all the timelines kind of get pushed out and there's no action to be taken. Therefore, you kind of like just wait until the litigation's done, and then if it survives, the rule goes into effect. The Court of Appeals denied that stay. So that was on July 18th. On July 23rd, it was immediately appealed to the Supreme Court to make a decision for a stay. So we're expecting to hear something back end of the month, September, from the Supreme Court, whether they'll stay it or not. The Court of Appeals, which is where the case will be heard, has indicated that they're willing to do briefs like in the 24 term, which is good news for us because that means that the case we'll hear like 2025, 26 timeframe of when the litigation will be over. Depending on how that litigation goes, odds are it's going to go to the Supreme Court either way. So that kind of pushes out an answer from the Supreme Court till like 2027 before we'll know if this rule stays in place or if it goes away. So that's kind of what's going on right now. I did want to show, because this is the third round of greenhouse gas rules that has come around. The Clean Power Plan was one. Then Trump had the Affordable Energy Act. And then we have this one, which is kind of known as Clean Power Plan, 2.0. Just, you can see the graph. I want to show you overall Florida, the reductions that have taken place since 2000. You can see about a 35% overall reduction on carbon. And then you can just see from our own emissions that we've almost lowered our carbon emissions by 45%. And this is due to a couple of factors, retirement of power park, as well as shear and increasing our natural gas. Oops.
Do we,
Can you go back?
when we buy off the grid, do we figure in the carbon on that, or is that a freebie?
Interesting point. On other pollutants, it's always the source, the generator, that's responsible for those pollutants. And that's kind of how we've done the greenhouse gas. So it comes from the generator. So it's actually from the source, it's source specific. I don't know that could change. The rule doesn't specifically state anything about that, of who's ultimately responsible.
So just keep me from being confused. The 45% we've saved doesn't take into consideration the fact that we're buying it from FP&L and bringing it up. I mean, is that how we saved it, by buying it from FP&L instead of just producing it ourselves?
Well, I think, and Ricky can answer the capacities situation, but getting rid of the coal units, which are higher producers of CO2 emissions, and using like Brandy Branch in our natural gas units more has caused savings in this. And yes, there is some purchase power agreements that we have that you could say that, but out of that 40% or 45%, maybe 10% of it is because we're purchasing power, but the other 30% is because we've reduced emissions from our own facility.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
So I wanted to touch, and this is why I wanted to kind of go through the litigation piece of it, because what's required in the rule, 2 years after the rule was finalized, which was May 2024, we're required to work with the state to come up with what is called a state implementation plan. So basically, the state's going to work with all the utilities in the state and say, what are your plans? How are you going to address this? And then they'll put together a plan that gets submitted to EPA for approval. Unfortunately, the rule specifically states, and this is where that stay comes in, that we have to submit these plans, or the state has to submit those plans by May of 2026. So we're going to have to move forward with how we're going to address this rule before the litigation's probably over or finalized. So we won't even know if the rule is going to be in place on this, but we're going to have to plan like the rule is going to be in place. And as I said, the units that are impacted are units 1 and 2. Those are going to be the impacted units for our existing units. So the decisions there's 3 options. We can say we're not going to do anything. In 2032, we'll retire those units. We can say, well, we're going to convert them to 40% gas, and that would allow us to operate them till 2039. Right now, we don't know if the carbon sequestration is viable. So we can't really answer that question at this point in time.
Sequestration's been around for a while, and wasn't there a plant out in Mississippi that was built and it's kind of been a disaster?
In the Texas area, yes. And it's like, yeah, it's been offline for forever. And there's only one other working plant. I think it's up in Canada. And they don't sequester 100% either. That's the other thing about this, is the technology hasn't been proven to do 100% total carbon. So they're doing like 30-40% on those type of plants. So they're not even capturing all the carbon that they're producing.
Do we have a plan B? I mean, first of all, I think whether we're Republicans or Democrats, the Democrats are gonna be in half the time, and they're gonna keep coming back and making us have tighter regulations. It doesn't seem reasonable to me to have hope as a strategy, and if we've got to assume that sequestration may not work. And what is the right thing to do to look at solar and wind as the option, or is there some other option that we could consider if sequestration is just unfeasible?
Well, and we're already, you want to take that one?
Well, help me out, let's go down the wrong path here, but one of the options is the 40% limitation. Then you just run it at 40% and you backfill on the off-peak times with our other generation we already have that are not subject to the greenhouse gas rule. So you basically figure out how to dispatch it such that you work within the limitations of the rule. So on peak, we would obviously dispatch it to meet our commitments. But then at off times, we would lower it to its minimum so we could save that capacity for only peak. So there are ways of doing it without not building it. It is still a viable option. Wind is really not an option in the Southeast, especially for Florida. You have to go off the coast to build stuff all the way around the coast of Florida to get enough wind to do anything from a capacity standpoint, an energy standpoint. Solar takes up a lot of space. So we are looking to add more solar, as the IRP indicated from 2023. We're looking to import more solar, and we have signed contracts that the board approved for Florida Renewable Partners to get 200 megawatts of solar as well. So all that's going to reduce our carbon emissions, but we still have to control and balance with our demand. So there are options to meet that requirement.
If I was the devil's advocate, I would say that 40%, we say that solar is unreliable. 40% doesn't sound very reliable either. Or it may be consistently low instead of off and on.
Well, part of our Northside 1 and 2 units now, their capacity factors are significantly reduced due to cost. So the coal and the petroleum coke that power those units, we don't run them as much because it's more expensive. We have turned to natural gas combined cycle as a more economic alternative. So from that standpoint, we can mix in our different units at different levels to meet our needs. The peak days like summer, like it is now, obviously we would have them at peak during the summer days, but when it goes out at night, our load go down, we can dispatch it down to save that capacity factor. It's all about a dispatch plan. But solar's mixed in. Solar's a part of it. It's just not the answer. It's just a part of the answer.
And the technology for batteries is getting better all the time. So battery backup on the solar, so you can use that as you're generating all that solar capacity, you can use it for battery backup. But the technology for the batteries isn't quite there yet. But we all feel that, in the future, everything's going to get better. So we'll be able to use those other technologies. There's also small nuclear modular reactors that are being developed that, they're still in the infancy stage, but we feel like in the next 15 years, that may be another option as well.
Thank you. Questions?
Just a comment. I think you're right, Chair Baker, on we can't have hope as the method. We got to assume worst case that they're going to hold us to the sequestration or to the CO2 limitations and stuff like it. And I know we're doing this. This also has implications with our IRP too. And we said it'd be a working effort. And so some new variables are now coming into this that we got to account for in the IRP because we owe that to the community. And sort of, I don't want to be an optimist, but maybe there is some carbon sequestration technologies that are getting here sooner rather than later. We just got to make sure we're staying abreast of those however which way, which is an obvious comment, but just stating the obvious, I think.
Sure. Yeah, we agree with that.
NG?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. I know we have a relationship with a nuclear facility in Georgia, I believe.
Yes, sir.
There's a limitation on how many years that's in place.
Yes, sir.
How does that factor into your thought process going forward, and is nuclear an option for our market?
So in 2020, 2043, 2044 is when the contract expires. There is a potential to renew, but it's very complicated on how it could be renewed. So the expectation is if these rules continue in their format, that the owner would not want to renew. They want to keep that for themselves. So by that time, like Kevin was stating, there's technology that is expected to come into play that would be options by 2043 and 2044 to replace that particular resource, and to comply with the new rule or whatever that rule will be at the time.
Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, we're not going to bank on hope. And so I think the preliminary indications going back through the modeling and what have you, including the greenhouse gas rules as they are written now, the combined cycle still comes out as the lower cost option, not as efficient as it would have absent the rules, but still comes out as the lowest cost option, and of course reliability and other things that we look at. One other thing that I'd like to add, Kevin is exactly correct. We've lowered our emissions, but for those PPAs where we know, such as Vogtle, and we also have a solar PPA, we do count that as our reduction in what we're emitting. When we just go to the market, we have no idea where those electrons are coming from, but for the PPAs, solar and for Vogtle, that is counted as part of our reduction.
I think we have one more slide. So as Kevin talked about the greenhouse gas rule implementation, we're doing all this in parallel. We're doing all this together so we can save time and not be behind the 8 ball when we need to get to meet those dates. JEA is actively validating the need for a new resource as identified in our 2023 IRP, and that's what Ray talked about, is that we're continuing to put that back into the model to see how it impacts the cost of what resource we would need to be serving our customers with. The new regulations, JEA is planning for multiple options that may lead to reaffirming the need for the one-on-one, as we did in our IRP. Expansion of the plan to what other resources technology may provide to meet any of these greenhouse gas rules, and additional scope and cost to meet those regulatory requirements. So obviously, as environmental rules come down, more and more costs will have to be applied. That's unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. So we're still trying to find out what the best options are to keep our costs as minimal as possible. So in the end, these, with or without the greenhouse gas options, the option so far, based on all of our modeling and studying, the best economic and viable alternative resource is what we're going to shoot for and what we're going to find to serve our customers. So with that, is there any other questions for us?
No, sir. Thank you. That's a good report. It's a very complicated thing and very, very important to this city. I keep wondering, we're looking at CapEx. I mean, we talked about the water plant, you know, it's 50 years old. And I mean, we've got a lot of infrastructure that is aging, and plus things like this. And we really have got to be all over what the future is and how we're going to pay for it.
Agreed.
Okay. Are we go to the transmission now?
I think so. Thanks, Kevin. So again, Ricky here, we're going on a transmission study. So got caught on the cable. With the 2023 IRP study and plan, this includes the integration of new energy resources by 2030 in our electric system. So to be able to accept these resources, we need to do studies on our transmission system. How can we import or provide, wherever these resources are installed, how can we get them to the customer? So by doing that, we conducted a transmission study to determine where the new upgrades or new resources, new facilities, new lines, new substations, new electric facilities to ensure the reliable delivery of electricity to our customers. This study has to be done in accordance with our annual requirements established by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC. They have a lot of standards around how you plan for your transmission system and how you operate your transmission system. So this is in 2030, so all the planning standards apply to this. So due to these new generation resources additions, we'll be sharing the results of this study for an identified group of projects. So based on the 2030 IRP results, we have to study how we're going to get that energy to our customers. So this study reflects those resources that was in the 2030 IRP. So that's the 101 and additional solar. So just some background. JEA operates 745 miles of transmission lines, owns and operates 745 miles of transmission lines in our system. We have various voltage levels. 500 kV, we own some 500 kV lines out on the west side of town. 230 kV, 138 kV, and 69 kV. JEA also interconnects with some of our peers around the state. So you talk about buying of energy. So we interconnect with FPNL, we interconnect with Seminole Electric Corporation, where we do a lot of our purchasing with. Florida Public Utilities, we also tie with them up in Fernandina, and Beaches Energy out at the beach. So the 69 kV system is really much smaller from a capacity standpoint, much smaller, and it was built initially as the city grew. So our 69 kV system is typically in the core of our city. So all the core down here in downtown is fed from the 69 kV system. So in accordance with our NERC standards, this study is to ensure that our transmission system planning performance requirements within the planning horizon are met and to develop an electric system that will operate reliably under a wide range of probable contingencies. So we have all of our facilities that are already in place. So how do they respond to this new injection of resources? So location is very important for that. So where are the resources input into your system affects how your system operates. So we have a list of viable contingencies we study and study the impacts of that. And then once we study that impact, we have to sometimes mitigate that. Sometimes that means a new project. Sometimes our existing facilities are up to the task. We don't have to add anything. So that's what these studies do, is they study our system and the new injection of resources of our existing resources and see the impacts. And then once the impacts are seen, then we have to build how we're going to mitigate those. So that's what this study does. So one of the things that's important to note on this is that the IRP resources that we studied in our 2023 portfolio for 2030, it also included our load forecast for 2030. So all the things are put into the model to study. So this study assesses the impacts to the JEA transmission system, and it results in an increase in system imports necessary to achieve our clean energy targets, plus including Northside 3 replacement, which was part of the IRP with a combined cycle in its place. So most of our clean energy resources, such as the solar, is typically sourced outside the JEA system. So if you look at Duval County and a little bit of St. John's and Clay, that's our service territory. So a lot of this is developed property already. So you don't have a lot of options to build multiple hundreds of acres of solar farms to supply your clean energy. So a lot of this we have to purchase from elsewhere outside our grid, what we control, what we operate. So that means it has to come into us via somebody else's system and ours. So we have to study that impact on our system and theirs as well. But what this means is we can only import a finite amount of power via our transmission lines, and we're required to be self-sufficient and balanced in our system without burdening other utilities. So we have our load, we have our demand, we have our customers' demand on our system. So from a NERC standpoint, a regulatory standpoint, we have to comply with balancing that load with our generation. So that's why we have units that run up. Kevin talked about peaking. We have to start them later when the load gets higher, and then we cut them off when the load gets lower. So we have to balance our load and generation within the requirements of the standard. So we can't just what we call drag. We can't just drag on somebody else. That's burdening somebody else. At the same time, they can't drag on us. So that's the rules that we have to comply with. And that's part of this study, is making sure that when we import these resources, we can comply with all these regulations as well. JEA is also constrained when we add future power purchases under these transmission contingencies. That's why we're here to talk about what buy more power we have to be able to survive that without violating our limits on our lines and all the technical jargon that goes around that. Solar energy also creates real-time operations variability, requiring flexible resources under JEA's control to meet that requirement. So as you know, every time a cloud moves over, the solar tends to go down in production, but our load doesn't drop as much proportionally. So we have to have something to take that place of that solar energy that got reduced by the clouds. And this has to happen quickly. It can't just wait until it decides to move up. Our units are slow moving, our legacy units. So that's why a combined cycle is so attractive, is it can move very fast, 30, 40, 50, 60 megawatts a minute, where our existing steam units are pretty slow, about 6 to 8 megawatts a minute. So control becomes a very, very important concern in this study. They identified transmission loading exceedances due to increased transmission flows from the west to the east is a problem, is a concern in this. That's why you see some of these projects that are addressing to alleviate that concern. So some of the real concerns, and we'll go through this list here. You see them up there, and it was in your packet. These are the identified projects to alleviate the concerns from the study. We can go each one in particular. We have some slides which go through each one in particular, and this kind of a summary here. So we can go ahead and go to those individual ones if you like, or we can talk about these. So this is our planned transmission upgrades. So this is one of the ones coming from west to east that I mentioned. It continues to be a concern as we import more and more power. We interconnect one of our peers at FPL on the west side of town. It's 500 kV system that we own part of that we had talked about earlier. This is where a lot of our import energy that we buy, market energy, comes in basically from the west side of town. So as we continue to depend more and more on the grid, well, this yellow line represents our facilities between FPL and ourselves, and where we import a lot of our energy. So as we continue to import more and more solar resources, this corridor tends to have more and more contingency problems. So the study identified this as a potential area which needed to be mitigated. So one of the mitigations for this is to increase the capacity of these lines. So the existing corridor is already established. No real estate should be needed for this. So these lines will just be increased capacity to ensure that we can import the energy that's in our plant.
And the yellow ones are where we're beefing it up,
The yellow ones are the ones we're beefing up, yes, sir.
and the green's just existing.
Greens are just some other existing facilities.
Okay.
In doing so, there's one of our substations. We have, again, very technical terms, but we have a couple of transformers that under these scenarios show overloads under contingencies. So they would have to be upgraded to a higher capability and capacity as well. So it's not explicitly shown here, but they're in the substation, and to ensure that we have that reliable transmission of power, we need to upgrade those as well, or they'll overload.
Give me a 101 on KV. I mean, it's counterintuitive to me that the higher capacity is when we go from 230 to 138.
So the 230 to 138 transformation, 138 kV has smaller capacity than typically 230 for the same conductor size. So as you step up in voltage, you lower your current, and your current is really your limitation. So you have a wire anywhere on our system is a certain conductor size wire. I'm just going to pick a size for an example. 636 aluminum is a common conductor on our system. Well, at voltage level 26, it's only good for X amount of megawatts. You take that and you triple it, quadruple it in voltage, it's the same current, but it provides so much more power, energy to the consumer. So the higher the voltage, the more you can transmit. You always have to step it down for the customer to get back to the customer itself. But to transmit it, the higher the voltage, the more power you can send from point A to point B. Did that help?
I'm completely confused. So when we go from 230 to 138, why is it that gives us more capacity?
No, the limitation is the transformer itself. So that's a 230 to 138 transformation. So at that site, we have some transformers that are legacy. They've been there for many years, and they're limited to a certain value when they were built. So they're 200 MVA apiece. So with this increase coming from our grid, basically, to get to our customers, those become overloaded at their existing capabilities under these scenarios.
Okay.
So
Thank
that
you.
facility has to be upgraded to accommodate a larger capacity.
Thank you.
So this is one project. Any question on this one? So that is not the only issue in getting power from elsewhere outside of our system into our system. So that upgrading those lines helps, but to create a diverse path is really the way to handle all those particular contingencies that are associated with that item. Excuse me. So this project would produce a separate, diverse geographical path to import power into our system. So this is from basically Brandy Branch to Dinsmore, which is a 230 line being proposed to inject power directly into our system around Normandy. Normandy is where these lines are going today, and it's been one of our lifebloods for years. As we import more and more power, and that's what the 2030 IRP shows, we need another diverse route to ensure reliable transmission of that power. So that's what this project is to create a path somewhere from the west side around our system into a new injection point to get it to our customers.
And we have to buy the land for that?
That's a real estate acquisition, yes, or an easement. We may have to go down public right of way or down a road or buy some sort of real estate.
How far along in the planning are we on that?
Very, very initial stages on this one.
Okay.
We haven't bought any right of way, nor have we done any design on the line yet.
You're making an assumption on the path right now. It's not
So,
around here, but we gotta.
right.
Okay.
The real estate would have to get the exact route. So that would still be determined the exact route. But we do have some ideas as we own some property, because we have some lines in the area that we may can stay on the existing right of way and just add another line to that right of way. Or we may have to go down streets and roads. So it just,
And would that be a 230 kVA?
yes, sir, it'd be 230 kV line. So
Let me ask one thing, going back to you were talking earlier about the solar and how the clouds and so forth, which has always been something that I don't know how y'all deal with. Does the future of battery technology help with that at all? I mean, is that something where the battery technology could help to cushion the?
we're hopeful.
Okay.
Today, the batteries are very expensive. So lithium ion is really the technology today, like what's on your cell phones. So to scale it up that large, they do it kind of like a 4-hour battery at a certain value. So you have to charge that battery at some point and then wait for when you need it to discharge it. But the economics, they aren't quite where you can replace a existing unit with batteries.
We have any battery in our system.
Real small. We have one purchase power agreement on our solars that has about a 5 megawatt capacity for about 4 hours. But that's the only real battery we have on our system today.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
So also to increase that import capability on the south side of town, to add a second tie line to our FPL counterparts south of us, as while the majority of it comes in from the west, it does some come in from the south when under these scenarios that we're talking about here with the increased imports. So another line on the south end of town is being identified as a need to ensure we comply with all the contingencies that are studied. And again, this one hasn't been designed. This is just in the planning phase.
I really appreciate hearing about these projects at this stage instead of at the,
At the
oh my
final.
God, how much does it cost stage? Thank you.
But just warn you, none of these are cheap either. So some of the other improvements, I talked about the transformation 230 to 138 on our west side. Well, there's some on the south side as well that have shown would need to be increased in capacity. So this is just showing those two particular units that would need to be upgraded as well. So there's one at our Hartley substation. The transformer is at 230 to 138 there today. It just need another one, just the ability to carry more power through it. So that's what these two here are, Greenland and Hartley. So that kind of wraps up the large scope concerning the IRP. There's some other projects we'd like to go over, but any more questions or any other questions on those? So on these, there's a lot of planned projects that are in the downtown area. There's some industry that's looking to come in between the stadium and the river in that area. Some other apartments. There are all kind of projects being proposed for the core 69 system and in particular downtown area. So in doing so, that's adding more and more demand, more and more load in our 69 system downtown. So as such, if all these projects come through to actually get built and put in service, that's going to require us to get energy, obviously, to them to serve them. Well, as you see, most of our resources are not in the 69 system. And so how do we get that energy from our resources to these customers in our downtown core system? So these projects here are very, very preliminary, but also are to meet that demand that's been projected. So if that demand doesn't come to fruition, some of these probably won't happen, but this is what's on the books today, and this is our best thoughts today of how to meet those increased loads. We already talked about the Hartley Auto. That shows up under both scenarios. So it's obviously one that's going to have to be done regardless in the future. But you see some of these others here, and we'll go over the map of them. So here's kind of our core downtown area, as you see on the map. So what this shows is, as we talked about, a lot of our energy comes from west to east, west into the downtown area. So these particular lines, one's called West Jackson to Paxton, another one's called Lane to Randall. These are 69 kV lines, which have a smaller capacity in our 230 lines. So these increased resources that we bring in from the grid are continuing to burden these resources to get to our load downtown. So these are projects that would ensure that these lines stay within their limits, stay within their rating capabilities. And this has been identified under the study under the various contingency scenarios. So these all are what the technical term reactor, all that means is limiting how much power can go through that line. So it's basically forcing it to go somewhere else. This new injection line from Picketville to Grand Park and our Brooklyn site is basically bringing another path into downtown to ensure that we can reliably serve the customers under contingencies. Something like these thunderstorms, if something trips, we have to continually meet the load. We can't just say we can't meet it on our transmission system. So these are ways of identified solutions to those problems that are shown under contingency. Again, all this is preliminary. None of these are in projects yet. This is all just identified as potential solutions.
Thank you.
And that's all I have unless there's questions.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, sir. And I'll tell Pedro he got lucky today.
Now, we're inviting you back, but we're tired of Pedro.
Thanks, sir. You have a good day.
Okay. Ray?
Yes, sir. Last item on the agenda. So y'all may recall at the last, I think it was the board meeting, so the delegation of authority, it's 50 million and above for capital projects, but there is a request to identify those capital projects that were 25 million and above. And so this is our first pass at doing that. So this is for information. And if you could go to the next slide, please. There is an actual list that is included in your supplemental materials. It is a color-coded list, and it includes FY23 year-to-date expenditures, FY24 forecast, and FY25 forecast. So we took a snippet and we call those our active projects. Of course, there's projects, kind of like what Ricky was going over. That's a study that's going to end up being projects in the later years and what have you. But we wanted to put before this body those active projects right now, and also kind of put before you what will be coming to you as future agenda items and what has already come to you. And so if you look at that specific list, you'll get an indication. But 25 projects that meet that threshold of 25 million or more, 5 are electric, 20 are water. Some of those you have already seen, some of those you've heard today. Almost $1 billion for the electric and about 2.8 billion for water. Next slide. And so we wanted to put this in some type of temporal context. So out of those 25, 5 are substantially complete, 10 are in construction, and 15 are either in design or in the planning stage. So this gives you an idea of what's out there now. And what I will say with a lot of certainty that this is going to be a dynamic list, because as progress is made, estimates will probably change. We have planning level estimates that will go into design, that will go into construction. And I'm very, very glad that you mentioned, Committee Member Morales, that we're trying to get in front of this body during planning phase, so it's not reactive, but that so we can receive your input as we move forward. And you'll see that transition as we go further and further down. More of these will be in the planning phase, if you will. So you'll have a level of familiarity. But this is to give you just an overview. Again, no action, information. I'll be glad to take any questions.
When is it ERP? Is that what we call the studies?
IRP, Integrated Resource Plan. Yes, sir.
When's the next one?
The next one we said that we would do for electric, I believe in 2025, 2026 timeframe. Water, I believe, is right around the corner. Same time period.
Thank you very much. You've given us a lot to chew on, and it's very helpful. And I appreciate you all being here, because this is the guts of the issue. Do we have any old business to come before the meeting?
I don't have old business, but I would like to compliment Ray and her entire staff. This is the guts of the operation. Everything's important. But as you said, hope is not a strategy. And I hope you see how long-term the entire team looks. Every area in JEA is looking long-term, and it will change. But this committee will always be abreast of what we're thinking. It will be dynamic. It will change, but you won't be surprised. And hopefully you'll be better prepared if and when things do come down the pipe. So thank you, Ray, and thank you everyone who worked on this committee meeting. Very well done.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned. I'm sure not. This is weird, isn't it? Technically. Oh, I love it. I can't, that's clear.